Hi everyone, I'm Don Ralph. Today we're diving into the International Criminal Court, or ICC, to explore its fundamental role and functions. We'll also take a closer look at various aspects of its proceedings, particularly in relation to the case involving former President Duterte. Join me as we unpack these important topics and gain a clearer understanding of the ICC's impact on international justice. The International Criminal Court, ICC, is a permanent international tribunal established to prosecute individuals for crimes such as genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Here are some key points about the ICC. Establishment. The ICC was established in July 2002 by the Rome Statute, a treaty that was adopted in 1998. It is based in The Hague, Netherlands. Jurisdiction. The court has jurisdiction over crimes committed by individuals, not states. It prosecutes serious offenses that concern the international community as a whole. Cases. The ICC can investigate and prosecute cases if they are referred by a state party, the United Nations Security Council, or if the prosecutor has initiated an investigation on their own. Complementarity. The ICC operates on the principle of complementarity, meaning it can only prosecute cases when national courts are unwilling or unable to do so. Structure. The court is composed of four main organs: the presidency, the judicial divisions, the office of the prosecutor, and the registry. Limitations. The ICC can only exercise jurisdiction over crimes committed after the Rome Statute entered into force, and can also only prosecute crimes committed in the territories of states that are party to the treaty or by nationals of those states. Controversies. The ICC has faced criticism and challenges, including accusations of bias towards African nations and limitations on its ability to enforce its rulings. If you have a specific aspect of the ICC you would like to discuss or visualize, feel free to let me know. ICC. The most common meaning of ICC is International Criminal Court. This is an intergovernmental organization and international tribunal located in The Hague, Netherlands. It has the jurisdiction to prosecute individuals for the international crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. Here are some key points about the ICC. It was established by the Rome Statute, which entered into force on July 1, 2002. It is distinct from the International Court of Justice, ICJ, which is also located in The Hague and deals with disputes between states. I hope this helps. Jurisdiction. The International Criminal Court, ICC, does not have universal jurisdiction over all countries. Its jurisdiction is limited. Here's a breakdown. Rome Statute. The ICC's jurisdiction is primarily governed by the Rome Statute. Countries that have ratified the Rome Statute are known as states parties. Jurisdictional limits. The ICC can generally exercise jurisdiction in the following situations: when crimes are committed on the territory of a state party, when crimes are committed by nationals of a state party, when a situation is referred to the ICC by the United Nations Security Council. Key points. Therefore, if a country is not a state party and the UN Security Council has not referred a situation, the ICC generally does not have jurisdiction. The ICC operates on the principle of complementarity, meaning it only intervenes when national courts are unwilling or unable to genuinely prosecute cases. In essence, the ICC's reach is defined by the Rome Statute and the cooperation of states parties and the UN Security Council. The Rome Statute. The Rome Statute is a significant international treaty that established the International Criminal Court, ICC. Here's a breakdown of its key aspects. Purpose. It created the ICC, a permanent international court, to prosecute individuals for the most serious crimes of international concern. These crimes include genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, the crime of aggression, key features. It outlines the ICC's structure, functions, and jurisdiction. It emphasizes the principle of complementarity, meaning the ICC only intervenes when national courts are unwilling or unable to prosecute these crimes. It provides a legal framework for international criminal justice. Historical context. It was adopted at a diplomatic conference in Rome, Italy, on July 17, 1998. It entered into force on July 1, 2002. Importance. It represents a major step in the effort to end impunity for those who commit the most heinous crimes. As of January of 2025, 125 states are party to the statute. In essence, the Rome Statute is the legal foundation for the ICC's mission to hold individuals accountable for grave international crimes. The International Criminal Court's ICC continued involvement in the case concerning former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte stems from a crucial point of international law: jurisdiction over crimes committed while a state was a member. Here's a breakdown: jurisdiction over past crimes. Even though the Philippines withdrew from the ICC in 2019, the court retains jurisdiction over alleged crimes that occurred while the Philippines was a member state. Specifically, the ICC's jurisdiction covers crimes committed from November 1, 2011, when the Rome Statute entered into force in the Philippines, up to and including March 16, 2019, before the withdrawal took effect. Allegations of crimes against humanity. The ICC is investigating allegations of crimes against humanity related to the war on drugs carried out during Duterte's presidency. The court's judges have found reasonable grounds to believe that such crimes were committed. Principle of complementarity. The ICC operates on the principle of complementarity, meaning it intervenes only when national courts are unwilling or unable to genuinely investigate and prosecute such crimes. The ICC has determined that the Philippine government's domestic actions have not been sufficient. In summary, the ICC asserts its jurisdiction based on the fact that the alleged crimes occurred during the period when the Philippines was a member of the court, and that the ICC has determined that the Philippine government is not properly handling the investigations themselves. The ICC has determined that the Philippine government was not genuinely carrying out its own investigations into the alleged crimes committed in the war on drugs for several key reasons based on the principle of complementarity outlined in the Rome Statute. This principle dictates that the ICC can only step in when national authorities are unwilling or genuinely unable to investigate and prosecute crimes within the court's jurisdiction. Here are the primary grounds for the ICC's determination: lack of tangible and progressive investigative steps. The ICC pretrial chamber, after carefully analyzing the materials provided by the Philippine government, concluded that the domestic initiatives and proceedings did not amount to tangible, concrete, and progressive investigative steps that would sufficiently mirror the ICC's own investigation. The ICC found that the Philippines had not substantiated its claims of conducting relevant investigations. Failure to investigate higher-ranking officials. The ICC noted that while some low-ranking police officers were investigated, there was a lack of investigation and prosecution of higher-ranking officials and policymakers who may bear the greatest responsibility for the alleged crimes. The focus on lower ranks suggested an attempt to shield those at the top. Absence of same case investigations. For the principle of complementarity to apply, the national investigation must concern the same case as the one before the ICC, meaning it should involve the same suspects and the same conduct. The ICC prosecutor argued that the Philippine investigations did not sufficiently mirror the ICC's focus, particularly regarding the systematic nature of the attacks and the potential responsibility of those in leadership positions. Unwillingness to genuinely prosecute. The ICC can deem a state unwilling to genuinely carry out proceedings if, among other things, the national proceedings are unduly delayed, are not conducted independently or impartially, or are intended to shield persons from criminal responsibility. The ICC's decision to resume the investigation suggests concerns along these lines regarding the Philippine efforts. Withdrawal from the Rome Statute. While the Philippines withdrew from the ICC, the court retains jurisdiction over alleged crimes committed while the Philippines was a state party, November 2011 to March 2019. The ICC has asserted that the withdrawal does not preclude its investigation into events that occurred during this period. In essence, the ICC determined that the Philippine government's efforts to address the alleged crimes related to the war on drugs were either inadequate, not genuinely aimed at holding those most responsible accountable, or did not cover the same scope and individuals as the ICC's intended investigation. This lack of effective domestic investigation triggered the ICC's jurisdiction as a court of last resort. Court of last resort. When the ICC acts as a court of last resort, as it is doing in the case of Rodrigo Duterte, it conducts proceedings designed to establish individual criminal responsibility for the gravest of crimes. Here's a breakdown of the key proceedings. Investigation. The ICC Prosecutor's Office gathers evidence related to alleged crimes. This includes testimonies from victims and witnesses, documentary evidence, and forensic data. The investigation aims to establish whether there are reasonable grounds to believe that crimes within the ICC's jurisdiction were committed. Pretrial proceedings. This phase involves the pretrial chamber, which ensures that the prosecutor's investigation is conducted properly and that the rights of the accused are protected. A crucial step is the confirmation of charges hearing, where the pretrial chamber determines whether there is sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. In the case of Duterte, the pretrial chamber has issued a warrant of arrest and has set a schedule for the confirmation of charges hearing. Trial. If the charges are confirmed, the case moves to the trial chamber. The trial involves the presentation of evidence by the prosecutor and the defense. The trial chamber determines the guilt or innocence of the accused. Sentencing. If the accused is found guilty, the trial chamber imposes a sentence. Appeals. Both the prosecutor and the defense have the right to appeal the trial chamber's decision to the appeals chamber. Victim participation. The ICC allows victims to participate in proceedings, providing them with the opportunity to present their views and concerns. Victims may also be entitled to reparations. In the specific case of Duterte, the ICC is focusing on alleged crimes against humanity committed during his time as both mayor of Davao City and president of the Philippines, particularly in relation to the war on drugs. The ICC's involvement is predicated on its determination that the Philippine government has not genuinely carried out its own investigations into these alleged crimes. The International Criminal Court, ICC, does not have the direct responsibility to produce the evidence of conviction to the accused, in the sense of creating or manufacturing evidence. The responsibility for investigating and gathering evidence lies primarily with the prosecutor's office of the ICC. However, the ICC has a crucial role in ensuring that the accused has access to the evidence that the prosecutor intends to use against them as well as any evidence that may be exculpatory, i.e., show or tend to show the innocence of the accused or mitigate their guilt. This is a fundamental aspect of the right to a fair trial. Here's a breakdown of how the ICC handles evidence disclosure to the accused. Prosecutor's obligation. Article 67(2) of the Rome Statute, which governs the ICC, clearly states that the prosecutor shall, as soon as practicable, disclose to the defense evidence in the prosecutor's possession or control, which he or she believes shows or tends to show the innocence of the accused, or to mitigate the guilt of the accused, or which may affect the credibility of prosecution evidence. This obligation to disclose exculpatory evidence is ongoing. Pretrial disclosure. Rule 76 of the ICC's Rules of Procedure and Evidence further elaborates on pretrial disclosure. It requires the prosecutor to disclose to the defense, within a reasonable time before the commencement of the trial, a list of the evidence and a summary of the evidence the prosecutor intends to present at the trial. Inspection of evidence. Rule 77 allows the defense to inspect any books, documents, photographs, and other tangible objects in the possession or control of the prosecutor which are disclosed or which the prosecutor intends to use as evidence at trial. Restrictions on disclosure. There are exceptions to the disclosure obligations, particularly when disclosure could gravely endanger the security of a witness or their family. In such cases, the prosecutor may withhold evidence, but must provide a summary if possible, ensuring it doesn't prejudice the rights of the accused to a fair trial. The pretrial chamber can also make orders regarding the protection of witnesses and evidence. Consequences of non-disclosure. Failure by the prosecutor to comply with disclosure obligations can have serious consequences, potentially leading to the exclusion of evidence or even a stay of proceedings if the fairness of the trial is severely compromised. Defense disclosure. The defense also has obligations to disclose the evidence they intend to present at trial. Rule 79. In summary, while the ICC prosecutor is responsible for gathering and presenting the evidence, the court itself, through its statute and rules, mandates that the accused is provided with access to this evidence to ensure a fair and informed defense. The ICC's role is to oversee this process and ensure that the rights of the accused are respected throughout the proceedings. The ultimate production of evidence for the court and the accused is the responsibility of the prosecutor, but the ICC sets the framework and rules for this disclosure. What are the major roles of the prosecutor toward the accused? The prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, ICC, has several major roles towards the accused, all centered around ensuring justice while respecting the rights of the defense. Here are the key responsibilities. Investigating allegations. The prosecutor initiates and conducts investigations into situations within the ICC's jurisdiction where there is a reasonable basis to believe that Rome Statute crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression have been committed. This involves gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses and victims, and collecting relevant documentation. While doing so, the prosecutor must act impartially and seek to establish the truth, whether it incriminates or exculpates the suspect. Presenting the case against the accused. If the prosecutor believes there is sufficient evidence to bring charges, they will present the case against the accused before the pretrial chamber for confirmation of charges. During the trial phase, the prosecutor acts as the representative of the prosecution, presenting evidence and arguments to prove the guilt of the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. Disclosing evidence. A fundamental duty of the prosecutor is to disclose evidence to the defense. This includes exculpatory evidence, any evidence in the prosecutor's possession or control that shows or tends to show the innocence of the accused or could mitigate their guilt. This obligation is ongoing throughout the proceedings. Incriminating evidence. The evidence that the prosecutor intends to present at trial to prove the charges against the accused. This is typically disclosed within a reasonable time before the trial begins, allowing the defense adequate time to prepare. Respecting the rights of the accused. The prosecutor is obligated to respect and ensure the rights of the accused as enshrined in the Rome Statute. These rights include the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, the right to a fair and public hearing, the right to be informed promptly and in detail of the nature, cause, and content of any charge, the right to have adequate time and facilities for the preparation of the defense, the right to legal assistance, the right to examine or have examined the prosecution witnesses and to obtain the attendance and examination of defense witnesses, the right not to be compelled to testify or to confess guilt. Acting impartially. The prosecutor must conduct investigations and prosecutions impartially, seeking justice for all concerned and avoiding any bias or prejudice against the accused. Their duty is to seek the truth, not merely to secure a conviction. Considering the interests of victims. While the primary focus is on prosecuting the accused, the prosecutor also has a responsibility to consider the interests of victims and to take measures to ensure their safety and well-being during the proceedings. This can involve supporting victim participation and seeking reparations for victims if the accused is convicted. In essence, the ICC prosecutor acts as the primary advocate for justice in the pursuit of accountability for the most serious international crimes. However, this role is always balanced by the fundamental obligation to respect the rights of the accused and ensure a fair legal process. The Rome Statute is the founding treaty of the International Criminal Court, ICC. It was adopted on July 17, 1998, in Rome, Italy, and entered into force on July 1, 2002, after being ratified by the required number of states. As of January 2025, 125 states are party to the statute. The Rome Statute plays a fundamental role in the ICC's existence and operation by establishing the court. It legally created the ICC as a permanent international criminal court with the power to prosecute individuals for the most serious crimes of international concern. Defining jurisdiction. The statute defines the ICC's jurisdiction over four main categories of crimes. Genocide. Acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Crimes against humanity. Widespread or systematic attacks directed against any civilian population, including acts like murder, extermination, enslavement, torture, rape, and apartheid. War crimes. Grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions and other serious violations of the laws and customs applicable in armed conflict. Crime of aggression, as defined by amendments adopted in Kampala in 2010. The planning, preparation, initiation, or execution by a person in a position effectively to exercise control over or to direct the political or military action of a state of an act of aggression which, by its character, gravity, and scale, constitutes a manifest violation of the Charter of the United Nations. Setting out principles of admissibility. The statute establishes the principle of complementarity, meaning the ICC can only exercise jurisdiction when national courts are unwilling or genuinely unable to investigate and prosecute these crimes. It also outlines other admissibility criteria, such as the gravity of the crime and the interests of justice. Defining the structure and functioning of the court. The Rome Statute details the composition of the ICC, including its various organs like the presidency, the chambers, pre-trial, trial, and appeals divisions, the office of the prosecutor, and the registry. It also lays down the rules of procedure and evidence that govern how the court conducts its proceedings, outlining the rights of the accused and victims. The statute enshrines the rights of the accused to a fair trial, including the presumption of innocence, the right to legal assistance, and the right to confront witnesses. It also provides for the participation and protection of victims and witnesses, establishing the basis for international cooperation. The Rome Statute obligates state parties to cooperate fully with the ICC in its investigations and prosecutions, including the arrest and surrender of suspects, the provision of evidence, and the protection of victims and witnesses, providing for penalties. The statute specifies the penalties that the ICC can impose on convicted individuals, including imprisonment and fines. In essence, the Rome Statute is the legal foundation and operational manual for the International Criminal Court. It defines what crimes the ICC can prosecute, when it can intervene, how it operates, and the rights and obligations of all parties involved. Without the Rome Statute, the ICC would not exist and would have no legal basis for its crucial work in the fight against impunity. The Office of the Prosecutor, OTP, at the International Criminal Court, ICC, does have a significant role in handling the logistical and financial aspects related to witnesses and incriminating evidence, although it operates within the broader framework and resources of the court. Here's a breakdown: witness expenses and support. The Victims and Witnesses Section, VWS, of the ICC Registry is primarily responsible for the protection, security, and well-being of witnesses. This includes arranging and covering expenses related to their testimony. The VWS provides various means of support to witnesses, such as travel arrangements, accommodation, financial assistance for loss of earnings, and psychological support. The OTP works closely with the VWS to identify the needs of witnesses and ensure they can participate in the proceedings safely and without undue burden. While the registry handles the direct payment and logistical arrangements, the prosecutor's office initiates the need for witness testimony and therefore plays a crucial role in triggering the support mechanisms. Expenses related to incriminating evidence. The Office of the Prosecutor is responsible for the investigation and gathering of incriminating evidence. This process can incur various costs, including travel and accommodation for investigators, forensic analysis and expert consultations, translation of documents and testimonies, secure storage and handling of evidence, technological resources for evidence, processing and presentation. These expenses are covered by the budget allocated to the Office of the Prosecutor, which is part of the overall ICC budget funded primarily by contributions from state parties. The prosecutor's office has the authority to allocate resources within its budget to ensure the effective collection, analysis, and presentation of incriminating evidence. Overall ICC budget and funding. The ICC's overall budget, which includes the operational costs of the OTP and the registry, including witness support, is approved by the Assembly of States Parties, ASP. The majority of the ICC's funding comes from assessed contributions by its member states, determined using a method similar to the United Nations scale of assessments. The prosecutor's office must operate within its allocated budget and justify its expenditures to the court's financial authorities. In the case of Duterte, if the ICC proceeds with a trial, the OTP would be responsible for presenting incriminating evidence, and the costs associated with gathering and presenting that evidence would be covered by the OTP's budget. Witnesses called by the prosecutor would be supported by the VWS, with expenses for their travel, accommodation, and other needs covered by the court's resources. Therefore, while the prosecutor's office doesn't directly pay witnesses out of pocket, it initiates the process, that leads to witness support, and it manages the financial resources necessary for gathering and presenting incriminating evidence as part of its prosecutorial functions within the ICC's budgetary framework. As we wrap up our 30-minute journey together, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks for joining me. If you found this content valuable, please take a moment to like and share it with others who might be interested. Your support means the world to me and helps me create even more informative content in the future. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on our upcoming videos. Together, we can continue exploring and learning. Thank you once again, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.